Hello, we're back. How is everybody? Lynda, it's so good to see you.
So good to see you too. It's been like forever.
It has been, and I apologize. I apologize because mostly the last 3 weeks have been, I was super, super sick.
Yeah.
And that's actually why Trevor isn't with us today, because he's super, super sick now. And I actually had no voice. I had to, I messaged Lynda, and I actually used voice, and I was like, like some sort of sick chipmunk or something. I was like, I cannot talk. I cannot do this. This is not going to go well. So
No, but there's a nasty virus going along. And actually I was sick a few weeks ago, and then Arden got it. And thankfully nobody else did. We tried really hard not to
yeah.
breathe on people. We tried really hard to kind of keep all of our stuff on one side of the room. And oh my God,
Yeah.
it's awful. But it's awful because it's true. It gives you laryngitis.
Yeah.
It's a weird virus. It's kind of in your throat. My head was killing me. It was a
Yeah.
weird virus.
It really was. And so, I was so grateful that when I started feeling better, and I'm actually, my son was like, "Okay, stop talking, Mom, because if you keep talking, you're going to not, like, Christmas is going to be horrible, because you're going to be sounding like this for Christmas and nobody can understand what the fuck you're saying. So stop it."
Exactly.
And so I stopped talking for a day or so, and actually, everything started coming back to life. I feel so much better now. So
Thank goodness.
yeah, well, I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday, and we've got New Year's coming up. So, we're wishing you the very best in 2025 coming through. Today, we're going to be talking about how spirits affect us emotionally, or how they could affect us emotionally.
Right. I love this topic. I think it's a
Mhm.
really, well, I think it's an actually very important topic because when people have paranormal things that are going on in their environment, they often will just concentrate on, what am I seeing? Or what am I hearing? Or what am I smelling? But they
Yeah.
don't really concentrate on how is this making me feel? How is it affecting me emotionally or even physically? And that's something that,
Yeah.
we don't normally talk about unless we're working with a client. We don't normally see that, in any paranormal group out there. It's always, what did you see? Or here's a picture. What do you see in this picture? It's really interesting how we don't really talk about the emotional side.
Yeah. Well, I think that people are, scared to talk about the emotional side to some degree too. So, there's so many reasons as to why, but I do feel that a lot of it has to do with the fact that, especially men, like, men are not, they have that, especially when it comes to the paranormal, right? It's always been sort of a stigma. You
Yes.
don't talk about stuff like that. And I mean, we've been on cases in the past, especially when it's been dealing with, like, the children of the family, where the men are like, "Nope, not happening. Nope, 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 nope." And until they've had some experience with it themselves, and they finally concede, okay, maybe there's something going on here. Right.
Yeah.
But and the thing is I think that also too, this is just my theory. I think that with some of the shows that have been on, is that people get so emotionally ridiculously charged to some degree. Like, oh, there's a little and they go running down the hallway.
True.
And so people start to look at that as hysterics.
Yes. Well, that's true. But I also think that, when people are talking about, let's say, the emotional or the physical symptoms, they concentrate on things like, when Zach Bagans will say, yeah,
Who? No,
yeah,
I don't.
Zach Bagans will go into a room and he'll say, this room is making me feel ill. And I have been on investigations where I couldn't even go into certain areas because I felt physically ill. But they concentrate on that kind of thing where, oh, I have a headache or I'm feeling physically sick. But those are, yes, absolutely, people can feel those things. And I have as well. And I'm sure you have on occasion. But it's not just that. It's emotional. It's more than just, well, I feel sick, or my head hurts. It's way more than that. It's everyday life. How can they affect you emotionally? And I know you were mentioning you had a couple of examples of things.
Yeah. So I mean, it wasn't, now when we talk, when I say this, no, I do, it wasn't something that affected, I guess how's the best way to say it? It wasn't something that just give me 1 second here. I'm just trying to figure something out. Okay. It wasn't something that, what's the best way to say it? That like it didn't affect me long term, but there was very definitely two very short term type of things that happened, and both of them were really quite extremes. They were extremes. And the first one I would have to say is like when I very first started doing paranormal investigation, and it was like right at the beginning. Now, I always knew that I had been, I was sensitive, I had some abilities, all of that. But it was really at that very beginning where we're starting to kind of explore things, and explore maybe what I am affected by or what I do pick up, and et cetera, et cetera. And so we had gone out to this old farmhouse, and it was really interesting because we were more or less just doing an EVP session. And for those that don't know what an EVP session is, it's basically electronic voice phenomenon. So, we usually use a voice recorder, we ask questions, and the hope is that spirit will leave something on the recorder. Now, at the time we were doing this EVP, and but all of a sudden it was almost like I was back in the classroom of the schoolhouse. And for me, that's exactly how everything started appearing. And there was this little boy, and I remember having this conversation. Now, everybody said, because and that with me, sometimes I tend to channel and I tend to disappear, I guess, a little bit, or I, kind of go into a little bit of a trance type of energy. And at that time, I didn't remember a whole lot of it, but I remembered having this conversation with him because him and I were having a conversation in this classroom.
Okay.
That's how it was appearing to me. And so everybody was basically saying that I was just talking, and more or less just channeling, but they couldn't get my attention to, I was pretty out of it. But when we were having this conversation, there was something that he had said that just broke me. And this is like 15 years ago, so I'm sorry that I don't, quite remember exactly what it was, but it was something along the line of, I miss my friends, I miss my family, all of that. And I remember I bawled. I could not stop for hours. Like, we're talking at least 2 hours of me just sobbing. And it was like that uncontrollable crying that, you can't stop yourself. You can't get a hold of it. You can't, put the brakes on it. Like, you're just literally sobbing. And yeah, it was just unbelievable. Like, it was just something so, and I've never actually experienced that since.
Really?
Yeah, not to that degree. Like, not because of external not because of that type of circumstance.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that was it. But I wasn't even really sad. And that was the weird thing. I wasn't even really sad. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't even so much that I was emotional.
Right.
At that moment, it was just I couldn't stop the physical crying. And it was, but apparently now I was told, because again, this was probably my very, very first time doing like an EVP session. or even doing any sort of investigation. And it was just something just happened. But the interesting thing was, is that one of our other members on our team was actually he was also a medium. He was a psychic medium. And so, even though I'm having this experience and I'm thinking I'm all alone in this and blah, 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 he was actually able to talk because, some people were kind of taking care of me as I was like this big blubbery mess. But other ones, he was able to talk to, and he basically did say that because he could see who I was talking to. Like he was able to tap into that energy of me and this little boy.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, he wasn't able to interfere or come through, or he was basically an outsider watching all of this. It was so wild. It was such an amazing experience. It was beautiful. So
Wow. Well, I mean, when you think about it, when you're talking about ghosts and spirits, you're talking about energy. So you're talking about different frequencies as well. So when you were talking about the EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, I mean, that's basically what we're trying to do, is tap into those frequencies that we cannot normally either hear or see or anything like that. And it's kind of interesting because it is the frequencies that tend to affect people emotionally. For example, you'll hear of certain cases, and we have had certain cases where people have said, I have a friend, I don't quite know, maybe I'm losing my mind, but this friend moved into this home, and ever since they moved into this home, they're changed in some way.
yeah.
They're more reclusive, or they're upset all the time, or they're just not the same person. Their personality has definitely changed. So when we hear things like that, we sort of take a second look. Some people would say, well, they're just going through whatever they're going through in their life. It's not really the environment that they're in. But honestly, there are some environments, some houses, some areas that affect people emotionally and change who they are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even too is that there's been times where investigators have gone on investigations, and if they didn't cleanse themselves, or maybe they just got a ride along a passenger of some sort that decided to come home with them or whatever, that can change the environment also.
Well, that's true. I mean, when you talk about, tag-alongs or people that have attachments after going on an investigation, or even just to the mall. I mean, honestly, sometimes you can pick up, a tag-along if you're just going to the mall, because they know, right? They can sense a sensitive person. And sometimes they just like to tag along, but that you've picked one up because, your head will feel funny, or you might feel dizzy. I mean, how many times have you been on an investigation where you enter a specific area of a home or a business, and all of a sudden you feel so dizzy? It's like,
oh yeah,
right? The environment has changed 1,000%. So those frequencies can really screw with you. I mean, they really can.
Yeah. That actually has happened, quite a lot. And you actually see that sometimes even with our clients too, is where there's just that change of energy, or, and it's interesting because we get that a lot, especially with kids going into, coming out of puberty and going into adolescence a lot of times, right? Is that their hormones are changing. And we've all heard about that. Like, especially it can create like a poltergeistic type of energy.
Yes, exactly. Because, some people do believe that a poltergeist is a noisy spirit, and it's something that
It's
is
just our teenagers.
right. But yeah, and really it's sort of a physical, because it's a physical manifestation of an emotional state, right? And really, it's quite strong for something to manifest as a poltergeist sort of entity outside of a human being is really an interesting thing. I mean, that's strong.
Yeah.
You don't really understand how strong it is until you've actually experienced it.
Well, okay. So saying that, I'm actually going to tell you about the other story that I have. Now, this one's a little darker, and it's something that I have literally never, again, I've never experienced it ever since this happened. And it scared me because you realize what you'll understand what I'm talking about. So like very much like your team, we actually used to do weekly paranormal meetings. So we would invite the public, and we would do paranormal meetings where, basically people can come, and we would have, guests or guest speakers or guests, or maybe we would do, a quick, trip around a cemetery, or maybe, we would just talk about the paranormal, or even allow people to talk about their experiences as well. So every week we used to do something different. And there was this one week where the weather was kind of crappy. So it was really, really quiet. Like there was basically just our team and maybe like one other person showed up. Now, normally our meetings would have anywhere between 20 to 50 people every week. So this was unusual because there was only like literally like one other person that just kind of randomly walked in. So we were getting ready to actually close it up and just go home. And all of a sudden, these two girls walked in. Okay. But the interesting thing is, Lynda, here's the thing, is just before this happened, I could feel my temper starting to change. You know me, like I'm a pretty even tempered type of person, and I'm very straight up. Like if I don't hold back on shit, right? But I could feel like, I don't know how to explain it. I started getting twitchy, I guess is the best way to say it. Like, how you kind of get like, I feel irritated. I don't feel comfortable in my skin. Like I felt like starting to get really irritated, and I kind of wanted to like go, like I was like, okay, I want to go. I want to go home. Like I'm done. I want to go home.
Yes.
And all of a sudden these two girls come walking in. And they're like, oh, we heard there was a paranormal meeting and and they come and sit down. And something about them, I knew that my behavior was being created or caused because of at least like the one. There was just something about the energy of this person. And there was something very, very disturbing. And it was just, I don't even know. So, we kind of asked them their experiences and, trying to basically, but at the same time, we kind of just wanted to go home. Like we were all pretty much done. Right. And when I was talking to her, we were all sitting in a circle, and I swear to God, Lynda, this is what happened. And I've seen this happen before, but I've never had that experience before. When we were talking, while she was talking, I remember looking at her, and I remember her looking straight ahead, but it was almost as though like a filter was over her, and she looked at me like that.
Oh God.
And she had the most horrific. Did you ever see the movie? What's that movie with The Devil's Advocate?
The Devil's Advocate. No, I haven't seen that.
There is a face that these things make, and it was like this big, horrible smile with pointy teeth. But she was looking this way, but it was almost like she turned her head.
Oh God.
Like there was two of her. Do you know what I mean? Like she
Right.
was looking ahead, talking to whoever, and all of a sudden, boom, she was glaring at me, like as if to say, and it sounds crazy because when I saw this, I was like, I'm freaking crazy. Like that's how you know what I mean? Like I was like, the fuck did I just see? Like, did I really just see this? Like I was just like, but the interesting thing is I kept getting angry. Like I was like inside of myself, I was so fucking angry. I've
Yes.
never felt anything like that in my life. And I mean, I've been in situations where you should be this angry, and you are, but for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, not because of somebody just talking or whatever it was. Like, there was no, if you were trying to explain that to somebody, they would be like, are you crazy? Like, there's nothing wrong with this person.
Right.
Like, why are you reacting like this? But the anger was just something that I had never experienced. I was out of my mind, crazy.
Right.
And I went, I have to go.
Wow.
Like, it was so strong. And of course, the other person that we had on the team was the medium, was really picking up on this. I was trying my best to be very diplomatic throughout it. I wasn't saying or doing anything. I wasn't being snappy. I wasn't, I was just like, I'm going to go.
Wow.
Before I do something that I'm really going to regret.
Interesting.
And it was, well, here's the really interesting thing. So I went home, and I got a phone call later that night, from this medium. And it's like, what is going on with you? What was wrong with you? Like, and I tried to explain. I said, look, you know what? There was something about this person. There was something wrong with this woman. And this is what I saw. This is what I visually saw from her.
Right.
And I've seen this in other people since then. Okay. And this, I'm not gonna say who, but they are higher up. Yes. Or have been celebrity figures of some sort. Okay. All right. That's the best way to say it. But I have seen that face before, but it's never affected me to the way it was. So anyway, so we talked about it. I apologized for my leaving. I didn't really apologize. I'm not going to apologize for nothing, but because I left politely, I did what I had to do.
Right.
But it was interesting because about 2 weeks later, he gets an email, and he messages me, and he phones me up, I should say, and says, okay, well, I apologize to you for what you experienced, because apparently she sent an email explaining how she had been possessed, apparently, the year before.
Oh.
And she actually had gone through like a personal exorcism with a shaman and all kinds of stuff. And, and she wanted to join our team and all of this stuff. And he was like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. And he said, it's interesting because it coincides exactly with what it was that I had seen, even though I had never met her before. I knew nothing about this girl.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So when we talk about spirits affecting us, absolutely they can. And I mean, instantly, as soon as I left that place, like as soon as I was a distance away, like probably I would say about halfway home, it just disappeared.
That's amazing.
I didn't stay angry. It was like nothing I had experienced, like I hadn't experienced anything.
That's interesting.
Only while I was there. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was, and again, like I've seen that face before, but it's never affected me, to that degree. And I've never been that angry for absolutely, I guess, essentially it was nothing. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
that's interesting. Well, because when I was a teenager, I remember taking the metro in Montreal, and I was with a friend. And we were going to a movie, and this girl said to me, oh my God, something weird just happened to me. And I said, what? Now, the car that was attached to our car, you can see the people, of course, in the car, kind of like you're on a subway or whatever. Well, on the metro, you could really see them because there's quite a large door, which is, obviously a window as well. And she said, I don't know if I want to tell you. And I said, why? And she said, well, there's a woman standing there, and she's not even looking at me, but she looked at me. And I said, what are you talking about? And she described exactly what you described.
Mhm.
She
Yeah.
said she was
Yeah.
looking, holding on and looking out of the doors,
Yeah.
but she wasn't even looking at me. And yet her head
Mhm.
turned to me and
Yeah.
she had this evil smile on her face. So when you said that,
Yeah.
kind of triggered that memory. And I said, come on, that can't happen. And she said, oh yeah, no, it did. It totally did. So, you kind of wonder, right? If you're a sensitive person, you can pick up on all kinds of strangeness, and it's not just frequencies or anything like that, but you can pick up on whatever, I guess, entities might be attached to another human being.
I'm going to show you the face.
Oh God, that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I want to pull it up because honestly,
Oh
it was something that I had, like I said, I had never
right.
experienced before. I don't want to put it on my computer though, somehow. So hang on a second. I'm trying to open it up so that I don't have to load it to my computer. It's one of those things I don't want on my computer at all.
But you don't want to see it.
What's that?
You don't want to see it inadvertently. I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to see it.
Hang on a second. Give me one. I'm just going to share my screen. Hang on a second.
Okay,
here.
cool.
And you can kind of get, you'll get kind of an idea.
Okay.
Do you guys see that?
Yes, we see all of that. Oh yeah, I see how that is.
You see what I mean? Like that's
Yes.
the face. Like very well, I wouldn't say exactly, but that is a very, very similar face to what it was that
Wow.
I saw. Yeah. And I don't remember if I'd seen the movie before or after or anything like honestly, I recently just watched the movie not that long ago. But when I saw that, I was like, I know that face. But like I said, I've seen it before. And I've seen it in random people, but I've mostly seen it in well-known people that I'm just going to leave that alone. Not political. I am going to say one thing, not political.
Okay.
But more advocate type of people.
Interesting. I know exactly.
Influential, like influencers, I guess.
I know exactly who you're talking about. We'll talk after the show.
Yeah. And I've seen that. It was very, very clear to me.
Yes.
And I was just like, shit, I know what this is about. Yeah. And, instantly. But yeah, it's like, you know, like you said, they look straight ahead.
Yeah.
But they're not. And it's almost like a ghost coming out of them, or you know what I mean? All of a sudden, boom, you can just, it's like I don't know which part is the real. Like, you know what I mean? Is it the real? Is it them that's looking straight ahead?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or is this a vision for everybody else?
Yeah.
And this is the reality right here. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know.
Exactly. That's sort of how she described it to me as well. And it's kind of like a glitch. Is it a glitch in the matrix? I don't know. It's hard to describe. But I will say, though, Kathy, while we're talking about the emotional responses and things like that, that spirit can trigger. I did have, and I think I've talked about this one as well, this particular case where this couple had bought this home. And in this case, it's residual energy.
Okay. Yeah.
And
so for those that don't know, explain residual energy.
All right. Well, residual energy is exactly what you would think it would be. It's a residue. So it's an energy that is kind of left behind in a particular location that has a particular either feel to it or smell to it or whatever. It is like a tape recorder that is stuck in time in a particular location. And in this particular location, it was quite an interesting one because it wasn't anything gross and it wasn't anything that caused headaches or upsets or anything like that. This particular couple contacted us. It was actually the woman who contacted us and said, my husband and I are well, we're not elderly, but we're in our older years. And we bought this home. And ever since we moved in, now she said in her letter, she said, or in her email, she said, my husband and I are not rabbits. But, he's been a little more amorous than usual. And so have I. Ever since we moved into this home, there's just something, especially in the master bedroom, that I don't know, it's influencing us in this way. And she said, it's not that it's a horrible thing. It's just that it's a little disconcerting because we're kind of looking at each other saying, well, why are we feeling this way? What's here? There has to be something here that's causing this to happen. Right? Exactly. So it was really interesting when I had gone over because I asked her if she knew the history of the home and she said no. And I said, well, do you know any of the neighbors? Do they know the history of the home? And she said, well, no, but it would be really good if you could come over and kind of, walk through the house and see what's going on. Maybe you can feel what's going on. Maybe with some of your equipment, you might be able to pick something up. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And when I got there, and I had arranged to be there at a specific hour, when I got there, I went over and I rang the doorbell. Not always do you hear the doorbell when you ring it. Sometimes you don't hear the doorbell. It might be in another area of the home. So it didn't dawn on me. So I'm ringing the doorbell and nothing. I even knocked on the door. Nothing. So I was about to leave when the neighbor pulled up and saw, of course, that I had been, ringing the doorbell or whatever. And she got out of the car and said to me, oh, are you going over there? And I said, yes. And she said, well, honestly, like, you're not going to get any response because the person that lived there beforehand disconnected the doorbell because he was kind of like a playboy. And he always had a different woman over. So he didn't want to get disturbed because, he was a real playboy. And it was interesting how much information this woman had given me about the man who lived there. And she said, well, he died in the house while he was having fun. And I said, oh, yes, he had a massive coronary. Oh, okay. And it was quite a scandal. So I got all of this information from the neighbor, and these people had never spoken to the neighbor, which was interesting. So when I went in, I gave her that information, and certainly there was a pervading sort of feeling in this house that needed to be cleared. That energy needed to be cleared for sure.
Isn't it right? Can't you just imagine like this ghost running around like Hugh Hefner in his robe?
Right? Exactly. Unbelievable. But again, it's a primary example of how, an emotional response can happen from either an active spirit energy or a residual energy, which I found was quite fascinating.
But do you feel like that was residual? Like, do you feel like maybe that was intelligent, and maybe he had some sort of influence over, if this is his thing, just because he's dead doesn't mean that he can't enjoy the view.
Well, I think that it was an amalgamation, actually, of residual energy and an active spirit. I think that part of him was certainly still there because he did die in that room. And as some people would say, he came and went at the same time. So he actually, part of him was still there. And honestly, it was an interesting experience to actually clear the air, so to speak, because after it was cleared, it was fine. It was completely sterile. It didn't have any of that, note of amorousness at all, which I thought was really interesting. So, it's amazing how spirit can affect you emotionally and physically, obviously. But emotionally, honestly, it's pretty incredible when you think about it. And it's not all bad. I mean, if you think about that example, it's definitely not all bad.
Well, we actually had a question in regards to, like, being affected emotionally too. And they're basically wondering, I'm wondering if some poltergeists are gremlins or goblins or something similar. So gremlins and goblins, that sort of thing, they're basically would be referred to as elementals. So that is a whole separate category, I guess would be the best way to say it. I suppose that they could be mistaken for a poltergeist type of energy because they can create a little bit of chaos or havoc or whatever, the thing is that when it comes to elementals, you're going to have more of that belief or no belief. Like, I don't know how many people are directly in the middle of that one. But if you go to Ireland and you try to argue about fairies, you're going to have some arguments against you. Like, they're not going to put up with you dissing the fairies in any way, shape, or form. But in the same saying that, their elementals are, different breeds, I guess, all over the world, right? Every country has its category of an elemental, right?
Yes.
But essentially a poltergeist. So there's two different ways of explaining poltergeist, and some people claim that a poltergeist is a noisy ghost, like it's an actual manifestation of something, like it's a ghost of some sort, or it's an angry ghost, or it's a mischievous ghost, or whatever, but it's an actual ghost. Whereas the term of poltergeist, from what I know and I refer to it, is a manifestation of somebody's own energy.
Exactly. So when that person is not in the house, that energy or that poltergeist energy is not there. So when we investigate a poltergeist, often that energy is attached to a person that is going through some issues, or someone going through a pubescent time of life, or a depression of some kind. So when they're in the house, all of these things will be happening. But the minute they're outside of the house and we're investigating, nothing happens. But if it were something like a gremlin or a goblin, that energy and those mischievous things would still be happening with all the people out of the house. So that's a real big distinction.
Absolutely. She says, on an investigation show, I saw the outline of a goblin throwing things from it. Well, I mean, and that very well could be. I don't know what show it is. But I'm also going to add, don't believe everything that you see on shows. I think, that unfortunately, we deal as investigators.
Yeah.
I think we come from both places. I mean, to some degree, we are grateful for the fact that a lot of these shows did bring the paranormal to the forefront, and it brought it to the public, and it brought it so that the people that were going through a lot of these experiences don't feel quite so isolated or alone or scared, or they have help, knowing that they're not alone in the experience that they're having. And I do have gratitude towards these shows, and for that particular reason, right? Because if we had talked about this stuff as I had experienced, years ago, I mean, people were like, well, are you drunk? Like, what's wrong with you? Maybe you're crazy. Maybe you're under a lot of stress. You're under a lot of stress. It's okay. That it was that energy. But yet, sure as shit, nobody wanted to stay in the house and sleep on the couch and help me out. Just, you know what I mean? They were like, nope, gotta go. Because I remember saying to people, well, just stay here and see what I go through. Go like sleep on the couch, right? Like, you know what I mean? Sleep in one of the spare rooms. No, gotta go, because they had already experienced something, or they would be like, well, where are my keys? I just put my keys down. Oh, well, must be my imagination. Pat me on the head like a good girl.
That's
Must be
right.
my imagination that took them and hid them.
That's funny. Nobody wants to sleep in the haunted house. I don't understand why that
I
is.
don't know. Well, like, why? Why would they not want to? You know what I mean? But, so, but at the same degree, the shows have also done a disservice in the extent of the theatrics and the drama, because we can never just get somebody that calls us and says, hey, I might have a ghost, or there's some stuff going on. Everybody is all like, I got a demon. Oh my God, I got a demon. I don't know what to do. It's got to be a demon. And you're just like,
Well, you know what? Having been on a television show myself,
yeah.
it is really true that, I mean, first of all, I was on Paranormal Survivor, and all of the cases.
Excellent show, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. But anyway, all of the cases were actually true. They were real cases. The issue was that there were reenactments of those cases. And because we're talking that it was a television show, it makes for great TV to have, if somebody was scratched, it makes for great TV to have them really bleeding. But it wasn't necessarily that much blood that these people had experienced. But it's great TV when you have, 3 major gouges on your arm or in the middle of your neck to bleed excessively on TV, because that is shock value, and it makes for great television. But I have to say, I agree with you, Kathy. Those shows were fantastic and are fantastic because they really brought a lot of attention to some of the things, some of the situations that people were experiencing.
Yeah.
And they really did help other people to not feel so alone and not feel so isolated in their experiences. And for that, I'm absolutely in agreement that, they should continue, because people to this day
They do.
still go through experiences that, haunt them, for want of a better term, throughout their lives, that they never share with other people. And honestly, if they did, and they saw some of these shows and understood that other people went through them as well, then maybe, some of that trauma could be alleviated a little, knowing you're not alone, that other people go through all of that stuff. So yeah, they really did a good service, but yeah, a lot of disservice too.
It really depended upon the show, because there was some shows out there
Yes.
that upheld a lot of ethics, a lot of, standards, I guess is the best way to say it, right? And then, you had the opposite, that it was just complete theatrics.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And, just also, I just want to answer Spider Bite here. So what you're asking here is basically something for what a medium would be looking into. I can't answer on the show who, why, what, where, when. That's something that involves in either an investigation, or, unfortunately I can't just pull out of the air as to who that would be. That would be something that I would be doing a reading on, or, maybe you have a local medium that you can contact, or a local team that can take a look into something like that. But I can't give you that information. I'm sorry, because I'm not there, and I'm not experiencing it, and I'm not focused on that at the time to be able to give a direct answer in regards to that. So, but we do appreciate you watching the show, and thank you so much for your questions, because we love the questions. We love the questions.
We do.
Right.
But valid experiences. And that's the thing. People often say, well, all of these things are happening to me. I don't know who they are. I don't know why they're happening to me. I don't know any of those things, but those are valid experiences. And the more we discuss them and talk about them and share them, and the more other people come forward with similar experiences, the better we feel about them, the more validated we feel. And honestly, it makes you feel not so alone. And I mean, and people like Kathy, they exist where, you can ask them questions, contact them, ask them questions, come to some sort of a valid conclusion, because let's face it, everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely. Everything. The thing is too, is I think the main thing to remember is that, first of all, we're in control of ourselves. So even if we are experiencing something that we may think had to come from, or has come from, a more spiritual or a spirit or a paranormal event or experience or something like that, just like seeing that girl, I had two choices. One, I can take control of this myself, or two, I take no responsibility and I just go, oh, somebody made me do it.
Yes, exactly.
And, most of the time what we need to do is go, I'm in charge of me. So whether it's in your own home or somebody else's home or in another location or whatever, you have to be in charge of you. Nobody is making you do anything. You're going to feel the feelings or whatever, but it's going to be up to you to also learn how to control your emotions, your feelings, your experiences, etc., etc. And I think that is so important, because if we just pass it off to, oh, a spirit made me do this, we're taking power away from ourselves.
Yeah.
But we're also not taking any responsibility for our own behavior and actions.
I agree with that. I think we all have to learn how to put up boundaries, because boundaries are so important. But it doesn't mean that if you're a sensitive person, that certain things are not going to permeate those boundaries. But what they will do, even if they permeate them, you'll be able to feel what's going on and be able to help a person to deal with whatever's going on, or be able to understand what has gone on in a particular location, but the boundary will still be there. So whatever is there will affect you, but not to the extent that it can harm you or bring you down in some way. I mean, for example, I had gone on an investigation to Picton, and I remember walking along the pathway from the bathrooms back to one of the buildings, and I was by myself. There were a couple of people in front of me, but they were pretty far in front of me, and I was walking behind them, and I felt something rush up to me. Kind of like, you're walking along and somebody is running towards you. So something rushing toward me, and I immediately stopped and said no, and I put up a boundary in front of me, and whatever it was, it could not permeate that boundary.
Yeah.
So when I said no and I put out my hands, it stopped.
Yeah.
Dissipated. So if I hadn't put up that boundary, and if I didn't know how to put up a boundary, whatever that was would have greatly affected me, and probably for the rest of the evening. But I think if more people know how to put up boundaries and sense when things were happening, and what was happening, I think, we'd all be in a much better place.
We hear about people's homes too, and we've discussed this before, where parents will find or see that their kids are being affected by spirits, and and children are wonderful little beacons for the paranormal. They're just like walking little paranormal antennas, aren't they? But the thing is to teach our children that too. And a lot of parents, they'll be like, I don't know what to do. This thing is affecting my child. Well, okay, and again, or they'll start threatening it. Yes. Which is the wrong thing to do, because as with any human, let's just say, or any entity, whether that's human or a non-human entity, nothing likes to be threatened. Threatening never works. Let's just say that. Walk into a store, while it's being robbed and threaten it, and I'm gonna kick your bum. Oh, okay. what do you think is going to happen?
Right.
You know, chances are,
Yeah.
nothing good is going to happen from that.
No.
So, but there's a difference between that and being able to take, like you said, the boundaries, having the boundaries towards the situation. And, you know, when you say, look, you are not allowed to talk to my kid.
Yes.
You're not allowed to bother my kid. I remember, you know, and this is even in Peter's book and you know, a couple of books. But, you know, when I saw my son, when he was pointing in the corner and he was like, the guy is there, the guy is there. And I looked in the corner and I said, get the fuck out of my kid's room.
Right.
Get the fuck out of my kid's room. Like, you are not allowed to be in here. And I watched as my son watched whatever it was walk out of the room.
Yes.
And of course I was just like, like hanging on to his little crib, shaking, you know. But he watched it walk out because I set a boundary, and we didn't have to deal with that again, you know, in the middle of the night, because it was him waking up every night, 2 or 3, you know, times a night. And he was only like, he was still little. He was like a year and a half. And, you know, he was just learning how to talk. And he was like, the guy's in the corner, like the guy. And he was pointing in the corner. And yeah, but you set that boundary, and you let the kids know too. It's okay for them to set a boundary.
Exactly.
Because this is their tiny little bodies that is being affected, right? And if something is scaring them, they can set a boundary also.
Yeah, absolutely. They can.
And it's funny because we've seen that. Like, we'll even see that a lot on like some of these TikTok shows, or, you know what I mean? Where the kids are like, don't.
Yeah.
And the parents start running around like, like chickens, you know, and whereas the kids are like, no, don't. Like, you're not allowed to do that. And
Did you
it's
hear
funny
that
how
weird
kids
noise?
automatically know that.
Did you hear that weird noise when you were talking about that?
Yes.
I'm just saying, you heard that weird noise, didn't you?
Yes.
Sounded like a growl, Kathy.
Yes. And something doesn't, well, you know, we've had that before though. We've had not that particular noise.
No, but we have had what people have said are EVPs
On our show.
on our show. Weird, isn't it?
Yeah, one day we're going to have to check that out.
I think we will. Well, recently I had something happen in my house. I actually posted it on social media where I felt funny at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I just couldn't sleep. So I went downstairs, and as I was in the kitchen, I have this glass pumpkin, and it has cookies in it. So the top of it makes a glass kind of that, you know, that sound that glass makes.
Yeah.
And I was nowhere near it. And it's literally, I saw it with my eyes. It made that sound like it was jiggling. It lifted up, went to the end of my island, and fell down on the floor.
Oh my God. Did it break?
Nope, didn't break. And it should break because it's glass and it's quite high. From my island to the floor, it didn't break. And I knew that something was there. And all I said was, well, that was not nice. And you need to leave. Yeah, and you need to leave.
What happened?
It was interesting. I picked it up, I put it back, and I said, now you need to leave. And I went to the living room and I opened my window.
Yeah.
And I got I got some Palo Santo, and I lit the Palo Santo, and I said, okay, you need to leave, and you need to leave now. And I felt it leave. It went right to my window, and it just left. And I was so grateful for that, because I don't think that it was evil or anything, but certainly it wanted my attention. It wanted me to know that it was there. And I really believe that it came into the house with me because I had gone to Value Village to pick up a few things. And there was a basket that I was particularly drawn to at Value Village. And I put it back 3 times. I had it in my hands and I put it back 3 times thinking, no, I don't think I want this basket. And then eventually I said, no, I need this basket. I'm going to take it with me. And I left it because I think it came home with me on the basket.
Yeah.
So,
I probably want to go home with you too. I wouldn't want to sit around Value Village all the time either.
Neither would I. No.
How depressing is that, right?
I staged the basket. I took it outside. It was just one of those things. I thought, no, whatever it is, you're gone. And
you're not allowed to hang out. You're not allowed to hang out and eat my cookies.
But watching that lid lift up and do that was quite something.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was strong. Whatever that energy was very strong.
But that's the thing, right? Is that, sometimes if we just observe what it is, because, a lot of times people will get so scared about the actions, right? And I don't know how many stories we've heard that, where people will say, oh, the coffee cup threw across the room.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, let's, what is throw to you? What does that mean to you? Right. Because it could be like, oh, I moved like that. Or did the cup actually lift up and like fly across? Because now we're talking 2 different things happening here.
Yes.
Like that's 2 whole separate. We need to know how to handle this ourselves. So we need to know, like, did it just kind of slide across it? Because maybe it's just like helping you out and giving you some coffee or showing you where your coffee cup is, or maybe, whatever. Who knows? Like, that's a whole different thing than your coffee cup getting chucked against a wall.
Right.
Right.
Oh, and you know what?
Those are 2 different emotions going on there.
Right. And you wanted to know, was the basket new or used? Used. Value Village is a secondhand thrift store. So definitely it was used. And that's why I put it back, I think, 3 times, because I felt that there was something there. But I, of course, ignored my instincts, as I sometimes want to do. I shouldn't have ignored my instincts, but whatever it was saying, look what I can do. Look what I can do.
Yeah. I think it just wanted the cookies, quite honestly.
I think you might be right. You might
be right. It was probably like, you're stuck in Value Village. Like literally, like,
right?
You smell some good cookies going on. You're going to go for those cookies. That's what I'm thinking. So,
and my cat would not go downstairs, which I thought was interesting too.
Yeah.
My cat would go down, and as soon as it was gone, my cat came back downstairs. So there you go. Cats pick up on that energy too.
Oh, do they ever? I remember my dogs, actually, they used to sit at the end of the stairs and growl up the stairs, and both of them would sit side by side. So, one, and they would just both look up and be like,
great.
And you're like, okay, cool. So, my bathroom's upstairs. I don't need to go to the bathroom for like ever. I'm good.
Right.
I got a good ladder going. We're good. Okay. Yeah. You guys, I'll wait until you move and stop growling before I pee. I never need to pee again. We're good.
Well, I have a yard. I'm good. I'll go out with the dogs. We're good.
Exactly. Right. But I remember them. They used to sit there and look up, and I would just be sitting there growling, ears back and the whole bit, teeth. And I'm just like, that's we're good. We're really good. And on that note, guys, we wish to thank you so much for watching. We truly appreciate it. Thanks for being here with us this week, and we will be back next week. Oh, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Enjoy. Stay safe. Drive careful, and get an Uber. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.